we made a successful bid to the MDLR for funding to create some reusable learning resources. It's really exciting for us. We've been creating and using e-learning resources for about 10 years, actually since 1999. I was the guinea pig on the first project we did as an end user, so I can bring that to the table as well. And so we kind of understand what the students will use and what they won't use now, and what lecturers will use and won't use. And so we've got two strands running through our project, through our proposal. We're going to make some kind of interesting little tools for students to use when learning terminology. We find that students are bombarded with terminology in lectures, and they don't always have a good grasp of it. They don't go and reinforce it with enough reading, so we're making little tutorials so that they can work through and learn terminology. And the second strand is actually making much more exciting things, building an object, animations, and we're hoping to marry the two together so you can bounce from one to the other. We're going to talk today about the terminology little tutorials. Early Irish metalwork is one of the most important things that we teach, and I'm going to get Tara to explain why, how we teach it and why we teach it and what problems we encounter.
Well, we teach early Irish metalwork at 3 different levels. The first year, the fourth years, and also at the postgraduate level. So the students are constantly being exposed to this material, and what we're finding is that there is a blurring of the line between style and technique with regard to the Irish metalwork. So we thought that to try and clarify the two for the students, we would try to develop some e-learning tools so that they would have something to help supplement the material that they were being presented with in lectures. For example, you have a slide here of a small filigree panel from the Derry Flying pattern, and the actual panel in filigree is smaller than the slide that you see here. So you've got this incredible minute detail and this really rich ornament, both stylistically and technically on Irish metalwork, and it lends itself particularly well to being blown up to a really large size for the purpose of lectures. But what we were also finding, and what we'd like to address, is to help the students relate the details that they're seeing on the screen back to the original object as a whole. So these kinds of e-learning tools would provide a micro level and also a macro level, so you could see how the pieces relate to the whole. We are starting with early Irish metalwork because there's such a large body of work, but we also believe that this could be applicable to other areas of art history, and the fact that the software is now available to do this made the decision even easier for us. So if Danielle would like to talk about why we chose to use Articulate for this project.
So we chose to use Articulate because it was kind of an all-in-one package for us. We have created learning tools using kind of a range of authoring tools such as Dreamweaver, and we also created some drag and drop exercises in WebCT, and we've used Flash. And we found that our level of knowledge wasn't good enough to make what we wanted in a way, because if we didn't really understand the code, and ActionScript is the enemy, then we just couldn't fix things if they went wrong. And Articulate just slots into PowerPoint. We use PowerPoint all the time for creating lectures, and so it's kind of a natural extension of PowerPoint for us. It's a really self-contained thing, and it allows us to create interactivity without having to resort to using Flash and authoring tools that are just a little bit beyond our technical capabilities. So we're really excited about Articulate. We're hoping to do things like record a subject area expert and embed those little videos into Articulate, embed other web pages, embed documents and PDFs and links, things like JSTOR. So it's going to make a really rich learning environment for our students. So I want to just really quickly explain our ideas for how we're going to embed all the different engaged interactions we've made into Presenter and how they're going to be navigated by the user. We've had a trial and error process, and we think we've hit upon a solution that works really well for our users. So the first page is going to be like a menu page that you have in a website, and this allows for branching off to 3 different elements within the metalwork tutorial. The first one is the timeline, and the timeline sets the context for all the rest of the work of the kind of pieces of learning that the students can work through. So the timeline starts with the kind of late Stone Age and goes right through to about the 12th century. And then after students have looked at the timeline, that's the first element, it can be navigated to through this little sidebar or through this link. So students will look at that. We might put a little quiz in at the end, getting people to put lots of different bits of metalwork in their chronological order to just test how well that's worked. The next section is labelled graphics. And they're going to be pieces that have been mentioned in the timeline, but it's explored in greater detail. I'm going to have little labels on them that will be colour-coded, so I think red is technique and blue is style, or vice versa. And it will show how technique and style lock together to create these really unique pieces of metalwork, which are unique to early medieval Ireland. And we're also going to have a third branch here, which is the glossary. And the glossary, again, you can get to it from the sidebar or from this main menu page. And the glossary is going to give you all of the terminology that's used in both the timeline and in the little labelled graphics. So at any point, the students can see something in the timeline that they might be interested in, and they can probably jump straight to a labelled graphic of that. The labelled graphics, again, I think they'll probably be along here, so you can link to them. So they can jump straight to a labelled graphic and learn more about the piece of metalwork, and they can jump straight to the glossary and learn the exact terminology or get something to find for them if they're finding it a difficult thing to understand. So we wanted to make the navigation quite free. We'd experimented with making these quite linear, so you had to look at the timeline, and this was locked so that you couldn't really click on it, and then you'd have to move on by using this navigation into the labelled graphics and work through them, and then look at the glossary at the end. But we realised that our users would get very grumpy. We got very grumpy, and so we decided this would all be very free, and you can either work in a linear fashion through them, but at any time you can pop back to the main menu, you can pop back to the timeline. The labelled graphics are listed here, and then the glossary is there. So at any point you can pop wherever you like. And we're going to zip this up and put it into the repository. We're also going to zip up all the individual elements and pop those in as well. So maybe the timeline isn't useful for you, but you'd really like the glossary, or vice versa, and maybe the label graphics are the only things that you'd like. And we were thinking that we might actually make a HTML version of this site as well, which the navigation is possibly even a little freer, so that it suits lots of different styles of learner. You might have first-year students who would work really well in this way. You might have master's level students, and you can give them maybe a HTML version where they can pop around, and there's a lot more freer navigation even than here.